August 9th, 2016. A 23-year-old Paul Pogba returns back to Manchester United, having already won 4 Serie A titles, named Young Player of the Tournament at the previous 2014 FIFA World Cup. He was a star on the rise. There was a storyline to him, there was an aura to him, and he was seen as the main man to drag United back out of the post-Alex Ferguson slump. However, during this entire period, Paul Pogba always had one fault: how to get the best out of Paul Pogba. This is the conversations that many have had for 6 years. At his best, Paul Pogba is a box-to-box midfielder. However, in the new modern day and age, a pure box-to-box player is less used now. When he played at Juventus, he operated on the left of a midfield 3. That was never how United played. But who cares? Hashtag Pogback, hashtag reunited. Got to the Stormzy Adidas announcement. The hype cannot be any bigger. And for me, this was the most hyped signing that I've seen, other than Ronaldo going to United back only 2 seasons ago. And you may have noticed in the last 12 months, you may have not heard really anything about Paul Pogba, and that is because in the entire 22-23 season he played only 35 minutes. Tell me down below in the comments your thoughts on Paul Pogba, a player that for me should have been one of the best midfielders in the world, and at moments he was. However, it was never sustained enough for a long enough period of time, and despite all the potential that we've seen, and we know that he has the ability, seeing it not come together will forever be one of the most frustrating things in football. So tell me down below your thoughts, smash a like button and subscribe if you're new. And let's go into the Paul Pogba paradox. Oh yeah, and also my design company, Mazzola Designs, best football prints on the market, mugs, shirts, everything. Code Pogba for 15% off down below in the top of the description. Let's get into it. What is the meaning of the word paradox? Paradox means a statement or situation that may be true but seems impossible or difficult to understand. For me, this perfectly describes Paul Pogba's time at Manchester United. What is the bottom line of Paul Pogba? The best midfielder in the world, one of the best centre mids in the world, one of the most high potential players in the world. On his day, the best player in the world. However, this combines with a lot of ifs. If this goes well, if he's matched with this player, if they're playing this system. Paul Pogba one game can be a master of his craft and a pleasure to watch on a football pitch, and the next game can be incredibly frustrating, poor decision making, and to some people, maybe even a lack of effort. Always felt like Manchester United were grateful to have Paul Pogba and not the other way around. It should be that a player should be grateful to be at a club like Man United and should do everything in their power to stay there and to be a success there. If it was his very sketchy relationship with Jose Mourinho, the back and forth with his agent, his name never seemed to be outside of the media loop if it was for reasons of his own doing or not. At many times during his United career, it felt more like a circus. And then there is a complete just mess that there is regarding Paul Pogba's brother. But let's go back to the start. Paul Labille Pogba, born on March 15th, 1993, born in the eastern suburbs of Paris. His mother, Yeo Moriba, brought up her 3 kids mostly on her own, and unlike his brothers, were born in France and always had a separate nationality, as his other brothers were born in Guinea. And due to their surroundings in Paris, football became more of an escape, as despite the neighbourhood being relatively safe, it was very much vulnerable to violent gangs and encouraged the use of drugs. For Paul Pogba and many people across the world, they see football as not a hobby, but an opportunity to make something better of yourself. And they believed that Paul Pogba had something special. So, in his best interest, they homeschooled Paul Pogba during his younger years so that he can completely focus on football. This wouldn't give up his education, but it would mean that the external factors around school and the people across his area would not hinder him. He started his career at US Torcy and got his first professional club at Le Havre. Le Havre? I'm so sorry, I'm gonna butcher this name. During his time here, he was called up to the under-16 French national team, and throughout this time period, his personality and general aura and leadership was evident, and he captained every single level during the national team. And of course, as we all know, this then led to his move to Manchester United back in 2009, winning the league title for the Man United under-18s, promoted to the senior team and mentored by Paul Scholes. And only 3 years later made his first team debut in the Premier League against Stoke City in 2012. One step up, and he was always getting better and better and accelerating in his career. However, he got his first bit of pushback in his career, as in he asked Sir Alex Ferguson. Pogba was talented to be in the first team, but not ready to start yet. And even though he came often off the bench in the second half, Paul Pogba wanted to play, and he was a perfectionist, and he wanted to own making steps up. However, there was one final straw at Man United that made him make the move out. According to Pogba, this came when Sir Alex chose fullback Raphael to play in the middle of the park instead of Paul Pogba on the bench. Pogba was upset and told Sir Alex this personally, in which an argument took place, and Pogba was left training on his own and decided to not renew his new contract. And this all led to his move at Juventus. We all know what happened now. This is what is seen as the best version of Paul Pogba. Young, hungry, and willing to prove a point. Winning 4 Serie A titles, a Champions League final appearance, and a Europa League semi-final appearance. He found the playing time that he needed to prove what he was capable of. In his first year at Juve, won the 2013 Golden Boy Award, given to the best young player in Europe. A year later, Pogba became the youngest player to ever contend for the Ballon d'Or, and with veteran experienced players alongside him like Claudio Marchisio and Arturo Vidal, Andrea Pirlo, he was able to not only learn from them, but to give Pogba the freedom that he needed on the pitch to do what he was best at, and that is being a creative force. Reaching, of course, the Euro 2016 final, which we all know how that went. And not forgetting the 2014 World Cup, where he was named the best young player in the entire tournament. However, unlike other players at the time that were up and coming, Pogba had something more to him. He was more than just a footballer on the pitch. He had style, he had a brand to him. Going down the route of a Cristiano Ronaldo, that he is more than just a player on the pitch. He was incredibly marketable in every way you could think of. Millions of fans across the world imitating his hairstyles, his goal celebrations, buying his shirt anywhere they could. People may forget, but back in 2015, 2016, Paul Pogba had the world at his feet, and after 177 appearances, 34 goals in Turin, when he moved to Manchester United, this was mind-blowing. And not only the money that they spent as well, as at a price of £89.3 million, this made Paul Pogba the most expensive player in world football history. Manchester United were back. That was the feeling that they had. Paul Pogba, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Wayne Rooney near the end of his career, and they had a certain manager called Jose Mourinho too. And to be fair, for the first season, he did pretty well. Despite not challenging for the Premier League, they still won 2 trophies in their first season. This being the League Cup and also the Europa League, beating Ajax in the final 2-0, thanks to goals by, you guessed it, Paul Pogba. However, a 6th place finish in the Premier League was a bit of a shame, but hey, they won the Europa League, so they were in the Champions League for next year, so job done. 5 goals and 4 assists for United was okay, but his performances was very good. Paul Pogba was rated at 8 out of 10 for his first year at United, was seen as by far the best player in the team, and during this season, for the first half of it, they actually played in a midfield 3, being used on the left, similar to how he played for Juve. In his second season, 25 starts, 6 goals, 10 assists. United with a 2nd place finish, which you would say is pretty good. However, they were 19 points behind City with 100 points. I don't think any team would beat City that year, to be fair. His highlight from this year was not just winning the World Cup, but for United, that incredible comeback against Manchester City. As in 18-19, he had his best season in terms of his goal scoring ability. As in the 18-19 season, he had debatably his best season, 13 goals and 9 assists. This was in 34 appearances, and he had the most man of the matches in his career. So the first 3 years, I would say, was relatively a success, and I think there were factors outside of Paul Pogba's control which made them not being able to take that next step to challenge for a title properly or to win any other major honours in that time period too. It all came downhill a bit in the 1920 year when Paul Pogba was hit with a very bad injury. As beforehand, he never really got too many injuries other than one time back in 17-18, which he missed 12 games. However, in 1920 he got hit with back-to-back terrible injuries. He suffered an injury back in late September and he was out for 19 games, and he came back on Boxing Day, but yet suffered the same injury again and was out for the rest of the season. So from September 30th to June 8th, he missed the entire season. In the 2021 season, he also had further injuries, a same ankle injury between November and December, missing 4 games, but now receiving a new injury, a hamstring injury, between February and March. He would then collect the same hamstring injury back in November, February again, missing 14 games, and in that same season having another calf injury, missing 6 games. His first 3 years for me was a relative success compared to the money that we see flying around now, but in his last 3 years at Man United, it all went sour very quickly between 1920 and 21-22, where a lot of things went against him. Many questions about his personality, his mentality on the pitch. Has he got what it takes to get to the next level? Is he still hungry to become the player that everyone thought he would be? A lot of people questioning how to get the best out of Paul Pogba. That was a main conversation that we had in many years. What players do you need alongside him? Do you need Matic as a DM to make him a bit more free? At times they were so lost to what to do with him that they played him as a left winger for parts of some seasons, which is an area that I'm sure that he can do, but it's not really where you should really play him as a default position. Throughout his 6 years at United, he still had a relatively decent return from 232 appearances, having 39 goals and 51 assists to his name. The most memorable in his recent years was having 4 assists in 1 game against Leeds United, which was the first game of the season, and you best believe the hype that day was incredible. Sadly, we didn't see that for the rest of the year. For the rest of that year, he collected 9 assists and 1 goal in 16 starts. Of course, injuries got in the way yet again. Returning to United, having Jose Mourinho, and then going from Jose Mourinho to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and potentially he didn't have the right man to really get the best out of him. Or maybe that is an excuse. You tell me down below. It is really something that Paul Pogba left United on a free to go to Juve, and then United bought him again years later for a world record fee, and then left on a free again to Juve in those years later. At Juventus, as we discussed earlier briefly, you may have not heard much because he simply has not played. In this one season alone, he has had 6 separate injuries, from a meniscal injury to a knee injury, missing 21 games between September and January, while during that same time period he also had another injury from a thigh muscle strain, and then picked up a groin strain, and then picking up a tear in the abductor muscle, and then picking up another hamstring injury. So that's 6 different injuries that he missed out the entire season and only played 35 minutes. Of course, on a free transfer, it may seem like, okay, it's not that bad, but wages are going to be pretty high. That, and even wages aside, it is just a real shame that Paul Pogba is now 30 years old. He's not getting any younger, and with these injuries, and a lot of them in the last couple of years, I think that is nearly the end of Paul Pogba. Of course, he is still a very talented player, and he can still have something to prove, maybe later on. Of course, he is still a talented player and will still have that ability in him. However, he will never be seen as the best midfielder in the world again for me, and that is a shame. As I've always said, he's the best midfielder in the world. He has all the traits, all the ability. He's a chiseled physical beast that he's got pace, but dribbling flair and a passing range, which is unbelievable, and a shooting ability as well. He was almost like a perfect centre mid that you can craft on Football Manager, and to see it all kind of come down to this, that his end of his career, near his late 20s, is dominated by question marks of his mentality or question marks of his agent, putting him in the limelight for all the wrong reasons, and then injuries toppling that as well. It is a real shame, and in the last 12 months his brother has got involved as well. Mateusz Pogba, his brother, claiming that he almost died because of Paul Pogba, claiming that Paul Pogba lied to the police, pretending to be innocent, and with this comes from being targeted of threats and extortion attempts from an organised gang. However, this has all been turned around from Paul Pogba claiming that it's actually his brother trying to extort him, claiming that he's lying online to put Paul Pogba in a bad light, and that it is simply not true. And I don't think this has ever really been concluded either, and is still ongoing. And there's other aspects as well of footballers' lives that we never really know. For example, only last year, Paul Pogba and his family was kidnapped by masked men bearing an M16 assault rifle and demanded €30 million. Pogba tried to pay, but his account got blocked and was only able to pay €100,000. 4 days before that, Pogba's family also was threatened to be burgled at his house in Manchester. When you reach such a large level of fame, you become a target, sadly. And that seems to be the story of Paul Pogba. That's with fame, ability, money comes expectation, despite how high they may be, are so high and cannot be matched to the expectations that are placed on him out of his control, then sadly it does seem to go this way. When going back to Turin, the Juve manager Allegri stated to the press saying that he has to put his soul at peace, claiming that Pogba said that his head's not in it. And this all leads to the real reason of this video, that despite all of the expectation that he had on him, how can people expect someone to focus on just playing football when they are being threatened at gunpoint with their family, and the closest to them, his own brother, is accusing them of being part of a plot? What began as a small tactical issue in terms of the best way to get the most out of Paul Pogba, it seems like everything has collapsed here, that this isn't a simple debate about attitude or form or his role in the football pitch, and it's definitely not about hairstyles or dabbing. It's not about wasted potential or injuries. It is a collapse of a human in front of us. Pogba is far from being the only footballer that has been targeted by criminals or targeted by the press. It is not sure what football can do to protect its stars at times. And even if Paul Pogba never comes back to football in the same maximum ability that he was able to, at least he deserves our understanding. As we have seen with Dele Alli's interview today, with the overlap with Gary Neville, of course I've done a video or two before in the past about Dele Alli, and I've always been sympathetic of the fact that he had these things that he was fighting through, and sometimes there are just things that people just don't know. And I'm sure that even with Paul Pogba, there are things that he is also going through or has gone through which he hasn't disclosed either. I think largely due to social media, people simply see footballers as just, you know, a robot that's there to put the ball back in net or to stop the ball going in, and to be perfect, to be excellent, cannot make any mistakes. If you make mistakes, you get laughed at and ridiculed for hours on end by children online. And I think that I don't think we can change this. I think it's too far gone, because of players like Lionel Messi and Ronaldo for 10-15 years being at the absolute peak of physical but football performance. It does set the bar so high for so many other players, and if you just fall underneath it, then you are prone to criticism, and your critique is important at times. But I do think with social media it can go way too far, way too fast. So despite what may happen with Paul Pogba now, for me it will always be a great shame. His career and his legacy will never be looked back on in the way that it should, and for me that is a true disaster out of all this. So yeah, smash a like button if you guys did enjoy or find this interesting. Subscribe if you're new, and tell me down below your thoughts on Pogba, the treatment of him, why did it not go to plan at United. I'm sure there's many other things as well. I'm not a United fan, so maybe there's other things as well that I'm not thinking of, but this is my perspective of it. So yeah, I'll see you next time.